The room fell silent as Gregory Langston sneered across the table, jabbing a finger toward Simone Brooks. "People like you should be grateful just to be allowed in places like this," he spat, unaware that the woman he was humiliating was the owner of the very restaurant he thought he controlled. But in just a few moments, Simone would rise, not just to defend herself, but to change everything. The Sterling room sparkled under the glow of soft chandeliers, every polished silver fork and hand-stitched linen napkin perfectly in place. Known as the crown jewel of Atlanta's dining scene, it was a place where whispered conversations and clinking crystal glasses created a symphony of elegance. Behind the scenes, though, something less polished had begun to emerge. Whispers among the staff about certain customers, those who treated servers with disdain, who believed that status bought them the right to humiliate others, had reached the ears of Simone Brooks, the restaurant's owner and founder. Simone, a poised and dignified African-American woman of 47, had built the Sterling room from nothing but a dream and an iron will. She refused to let it become a playground for cruelty disguised as wealth. Tonight, dressed not in her usual tailored suits but in a plain server's uniform, black slacks, a crisp white shirt, her curls tucked neatly under a simple cap, Simone blended into her own restaurant, determined to see the truth for herself. No one except her trusted general manager and head chef knew her true identity tonight. She moved with practiced grace, balancing trays and offering warm smiles, every bit the professional waitress. She wanted no special treatment, no deference, only the unfiltered reality. As the clock edged toward 7, the Saturday night crowd poured in, a glittering mix of high society couples, corporate tycoons, and the newly rich eager to boast about their reservation. Simone welcomed each guest with a calm smile, her eyes quietly observing, her heart steady. Then the front doors swung open with a force that made a few heads turn. Gregory Langston strode in, a heavy-set man in an impeccably tailored navy suit, his wrist flashing a gold Rolex as he adjusted his cufflinks. His assistant, a wiry young man carrying a leather portfolio, scurried after him. Gregory barely spared the host a glance, waving his hand dismissively. "I expect the best." "Table." "I don't wait," he barked, his voice slicing through the soft jazz drifting in the air. The hostess, flustered but professional, led him to a prime table near the center of the dining room. Simone, who had been discreetly arranging water glasses at a nearby table, watched him settle in with an air of ownership, legs spread wide, tapping his polished shoe impatiently against the marble floor. "What's taking so long?" "Service in a place like this should snap to attention," he muttered loudly enough for several diners to hear. Simone inhaled slowly, adjusted her tray, and approached with her best welcoming smile. "Good evening, sir," she said, presenting the menu with a slight bow. "Welcome to the Sterling room. May I start you off with something to drink while you look over the menu?" Gregory didn't even look up at her. He snapped the menu from her hand and scoffed. "Just bring me a bottle of your best Bordeaux. And it better not be some cheap nonsense." Simone, keeping her expression neutral, replied, "Of course, sir. I'll have a selection for you in just a moment." As she turned, she heard him mutter under his breath, "They'll let anyone work in these places nowadays." She paused only for a second before moving on, reminding herself why she was here. She wasn't just waiting tables, she was gathering truth. The evening progressed, and Gregory's behavior only worsened. He criticized the lighting, complained about the ambient music, sneered at the wine list even after Simone brought out the finest options. Every interaction was laced with condescension, every word dipped in entitlement. Still, Simone remained composed, responding with unfailing politeness. She noticed Maya Jenkins, one of the younger servers, shooting her sympathetic glances from across the room. Simone gave her a reassuring nod, silently urging her to stay strong. The pivotal moment came midway through the dinner rush. Simone was delivering Gregory's steak, perfectly seared, plated with elegant precision, when her foot accidentally brushed against his under the table. His shoe, an ostentatious pair of Italian leather loafers, stuck well out into the aisle where it didn't belong. The contact was brief, barely more than a whisper of touch, but Gregory reacted as if she had poured hot coffee in his lap. "Are you blind?" he bellowed, his chair screeching back loudly enough to draw startled glances from nearby tables. Simone straightened immediately, the tray steady in her hand. "I apologize, sir," she said evenly. "It was purely accidental." But Gregory was not interested in apologies. He pushed his chair back even further, jabbing a finger at his now slightly scuffed shoe. "Do you have any idea how much these cost?" "More than your pathetic paycheck, that's for sure. People like you," he said, his lip curling in disdain, "don't belong in places like this. You're clumsy, careless, and clearly out of your depth." His words hung in the air, thick and bitter. A hush fell over the room. Simone's heart pounded, but her face remained the picture of professionalism. She would not let him see her wounded. She would not give him that satisfaction. "I'm deeply sorry for the inconvenience," she said calmly. "I'll be happy to send someone to assist with cleaning your shoe." Gregory leaned back with a smirk. "Oh no. I want you to do it. Right now. With that uniform you're so proud of. Maybe then you'll learn to respect the kind of people who pay your salary." Across the dining room, Maya visibly gasped. A few other diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Evelyn and Marcus Turner, a longtime married couple who were regulars at the Sterling Room, exchanged outraged glances. Simone stood still, the tray tight in her grasp. For a moment, anger and humiliation battled inside her. But then she remembered who she was, not just a waitress tonight, but a leader. A builder. An example. She inhaled deeply and said, "If it will help resolve the situation peacefully, I'll take care of it." Slowly, with the dignity of a queen stooping to pick up a sword, Simone knelt. She lifted a corner of her apron and gently brushed the barely visible scuff on Gregory's shoe. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the effort of restraining every emotion that boiled inside her. Gregory leaned back in satisfaction, his smirk deepening. "Maybe there's hope for you after all," he said loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear. Simone stood, smoothed her apron, and inclined her head. "Thank you for your patience, sir. I'll check on your next course shortly." As she turned to leave, Gregory's assistant shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly embarrassed by the scene. Evelyn Turner clutched her husband's hand tightly under the table, her jaw clenched in anger. "Mark," she whispered fiercely, "this is beyond disgusting." Mark nodded grimly but kept his seat. "Let's trust her," he murmured. "She knows what she's doing." Simone disappeared briefly into the kitchen, where Maya followed her in tears. "Miss Brooks, you don't have to take this," she blurted out, voice shaking. Simone placed a calming hand on Maya's shoulder. "Sometimes, Maya," she said quietly, "the best revenge is patience. Trust me. His time is coming." Outside, the restaurant resumed its quiet hum, though the atmosphere remained thick with tension. Gregory returned to his meal with smug satisfaction, utterly unaware that the woman he had just humiliated was the very one who held the future of his own business ambitions in her hands. Simone dried her hands, straightened her uniform, and returned to the floor, her steps steady, her resolve unbreakable. She smiled warmly at other guests, accepted their silent nods of support, and bided her time. The night was not over. And neither was her story. The soft clink of silverware and murmured conversation slowly returned to the Sterling Room, but the atmosphere remained charged, as if every guest felt the tension lingering in the air. Simone Brooks moved through the dining room with effortless grace, a composed figure in her crisp waitress uniform, but inside, her pulse beat with the steady rhythm of controlled anticipation. Gregory Langston, oblivious to the storm he had invited upon himself, leaned back in his chair, patting his mouth with a linen napkin like a king pleased with his meal. His assistant sat quietly across from him, looking as though he wished to melt into the expensive hardwood floors. Simone continued her service with an air of professionalism so absolute it almost disguised the quiet power she wielded. She made her rounds, refilling glasses, checking on diners, always keeping Gregory in the periphery of her vision, waiting for the moment when arrogance would inevitably demand more than a meal. It didn't take long. Gregory, emboldened by what he perceived as total dominance, snapped his fingers at a passing server. "You there. Tell your manager I want to speak to the owner. Immediately." I have a business opportunity they won't want to miss. The young server hesitated, glancing nervously at Simone, who gave the faintest nod. The server disappeared into the kitchen, and Simone quietly made her way to the employees' break room tucked behind the kitchen doors. Inside, she peeled off the plain uniform she wore, revealing a perfectly tailored black suit underneath. She smoothed her hair, applied a swift touch-up of lipstick, and slipped on a pair of modest yet commanding heels. In the mirror above the sink, she steadied herself, the owner once again, not the server some arrogant man had tried to humiliate. Adjusting the diamond pendant at her neck, she drew a deep breath. It was time. The dining room buzzed softly as Simone emerged, no longer a faceless employee but the formidable woman who had built the Sterling Room from the ground up. Every step she took radiated quiet authority. The nearby guests, recognizing the sudden shift in energy, paused mid-conversation to watch. Gregory, too, noticed her approach but didn't immediately recognize her without the server's uniform. His face twisted in impatience. Finally, he muttered, pushing his chair back slightly. Go get the owner. I don't have all night. Simone stopped directly in front of his table, her chin lifted, her presence impossible to ignore. Good evening, Mr. Langston, she said, her voice smooth and measured. I understand you've requested to meet the owner. You're speaking to her now. I am Simone Brooks, owner and founder of the Sterling Room. For a heartbeat, silence engulfed the entire restaurant. Gregory blinked, confusion flickering across his face, quickly replaced by disbelief. He laughed, a short, ugly bark. No, no, he said, waving a hand dismissively. You're that server. You can't be serious. Simone calmly reached into the sleek leather folder she carried and laid several documents on the table in front of him. They were neatly arranged, business registration papers, press clippings celebrating her entrepreneurial success, framed articles from Forbes and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution naming her one of the city's top business leaders. Gregory's mouth opened slightly, his eyes darting across the papers. His assistant leaned forward, peering at the documents, his face paling as realization hit. The diners nearby leaned in, straining to catch every word, their faces masks of fascination, disbelief, and slowly growing admiration. Simone clasped her hands in front of her, her voice unwavering. You see, Mr. Langston, while you spent your evening belittling and humiliating someone you believed was beneath you, you were insulting the very person you now hope to do business with. Gregory's face flushed a deep, angry red. He straightened in his seat, attempting to recover. Miss Brooks, he began, his voice slick with forced charm, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. I had no idea, you must understand. Simone raised a hand, silencing him with a gesture as graceful as it was commanding. There is no misunderstanding, she said coolly. Your behavior tonight spoke volumes. You see, here at the Sterling Room, we value respect and dignity above all else. It doesn't matter whether someone is a guest, a server, or the owner. We treat every human being with decency. Gregory's hands fumbled on the table, knocking over his half-empty wine glass, the red liquid spreading like blood across the pristine white tablecloth. A gasp rippled through the room, but Simone remained still, watching him with eyes as sharp as cut glass. I built this restaurant to be a sanctuary, she continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. A place where excellence and humanity coexist. And I will not tarnish that vision by associating with anyone who believes they are above showing basic human respect. Gregory opened his mouth again, but no words came out. He looked desperately around the room, seeking an ally among the diners, but all he found were cold, disapproving stares. Evelyn Turner and her husband Mark sat nearby, Evelyn's face radiant with pride as she began to clap slowly, deliberately. One by one, other guests joined in, the applause swelling until it filled the entire restaurant with a sound that was not merely appreciation, but vindication. Simone waited, letting the applause wash over the room, letting Gregory sit in his shame. When the noise finally died down, she offered a small, dignified smile. Now, if you'll excuse me, Mr. Langston, I have a restaurant to run and guests to attend to. I trust you can find your way out. Gregory sat frozen for a moment longer, then gathered his belongings clumsily. His assistant stood quickly, keeping his eyes downcast, and together they shuffled toward the exit under the withering gaze of dozens of patrons. The heavy doors of the Sterling room swung closed behind them with a satisfying thud. Simone stood still for a moment, letting herself absorb the weight of what had just happened. She hadn't just defended herself, she had defended her staff, her dream, and every principle she had poured into the Sterling room. Slowly, she turned back to the diners. Their faces shone with admiration and respect. Some nodded at her. Some smiled warmly. Maya, standing by the kitchen doors, wiped a tear from her cheek, her face alight with pride. Simone inclined her head graciously toward her guests before moving gracefully back toward the kitchen. Her steps were lighter now, but her heart was heavier, not with sorrow, but with the fierce, exhilarating weight of triumph. In the privacy of the staff area, Maya rushed up and threw her arms around her. "Miss Brooks," she whispered fiercely, "that was incredible." Simone hugged her back tightly. "We stand up for ourselves, Maya. Always. We stand tall, no matter what." As she stepped back onto the restaurant floor, every server straightened their shoulders a little higher, every hostess smiled a little brighter. The Sterling room had always been a place of elegance, but now it had become something more. A place where dignity reigned supreme. And Simone Brooks, in that shining moment, knew she had done more than defend her name. She had ignited something that would ripple far beyond those polished walls. The doors of the Sterling room closed softly behind Gregory Langston, but the echoes of what had unfolded lingered long after he was gone. Simone Brooks stood in the center of her dining room, absorbing the last remnants of the applause, feeling a profound stillness settle deep within her chest. She had not just defended herself tonight, she had defended the soul of the place she had spent her life building. Around her, the staff moved with a renewed energy, their backs straighter, their steps lighter, as if Simone's stand had given each of them permission to carry their heads a little higher. Diners returned to their meals with animated conversations, many of them casting glances of admiration in Simone's direction. Maya Jenkins stood near the kitchen doors, her eyes still shining with tears of pride. Later that evening, after the final guests had departed and the last glasses had been polished and stored away, Simone gathered her staff in the dining room. They stood in a loose circle, exhausted but smiling, waiting for her to speak. Simone looked around at them, the servers, the hosts, the chefs, the bussers, each one vital, each one deserving of the respect that had so often been taken for granted. Tonight, she began, her voice steady and rich, was not just about a rude customer. It was about what we stand for. It was about who we are. The room was silent, hanging on to every word. This restaurant was built on respect. Not just for the guests who walk through our doors, but for every single person who makes this place what it is. That will never change. No amount of money, no level of status, will ever buy the right to treat any of you as less than. A wave of emotion rolled through the room. Some nodded, some wiped their eyes discreetly. Simone smiled, her heart full. And starting tomorrow, she continued, we're going to make sure every policy reflects that. We're going to introduce new standards, training sessions, codes of conduct for customers, stronger protections for you, our team. Respect will not just be expected. It will be demanded. The room erupted into quiet applause, and Simone felt the knot in her chest loosen. She had not just endured tonight, she had turned it into a foundation for something even stronger. Over the next few days, word of the confrontation spread like wildfire. It began with whispers among regular patrons, then spilled into social media, gaining traction on community pages and eventually catching the attention of local news outlets. Articles appeared with headlines like "Restaurant Owner Gracefully Shuts Down Entitled Customer" and "Simone Brooks Sets a New Standard for Respect in Hospitality." Interviews followed. When asked about the incident, Simone spoke with the same calm dignity she had shown that night. Respect isn't a luxury. It's a basic human right, she said during a live interview on a morning talk show. And leadership isn't about power. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Her words resonated far beyond Atlanta. Emails poured into the restaurant's inbox, messages from other restaurant owners, small business operators, even high school students who had seen the video clips online and felt inspired by Simone's courage. Meanwhile, business at the Sterling Room boomed. Reservations surged. New customers flocked to the restaurant, many mentioning they had chosen to dine there specifically because of Simone's stand for dignity and inclusion. But Simone knew the real victory wasn't in the surge of business. It was in the way her team carried themselves now, with unmistakable pride. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the incident, as the late lunch crowd thinned, the restaurant's front doors swung open and in walked Gregory Langston. He was almost unrecognizable from the man who had swaggered in weeks before. Gone was the arrogant stride, the dismissive glare. Instead, he stood awkwardly at the entrance, clutching his hat in both hands, his shoulders slightly hunched. Simone watched from the bar, her expression unreadable. Maya, standing beside her polishing glasses, stiffened. "You want me to get security?" she asked quietly, her voice tight. Simone shook her head. "No. Let's see what he has to say." Gregory approached slowly, stopping a few feet from her, his eyes downcast. For a long moment, there was only the soft sound of jazz playing through the speakers. Finally, he spoke. "Miss Brooks," he said, his voice rough with something that sounded suspiciously like humility, "I came to apologize." Simone said nothing, waiting. "I was wrong," he continued, struggling with the words. "The way I treated you, the way I treated your staff, it was shameful. I've spent the past few weeks thinking about it, and I realize now that I've spent a lifetime looking down on people I should have been respecting." He shifted uncomfortably, his hands twisting his hat. "I know an apology doesn't erase what I did. But I wanted to offer it anyway. And to say, I'm trying to do better." For a moment, the only sound was the clink of a fork in the kitchen beyond. Simone studied him carefully, searching for any hint of insincerity. She saw none. Finally, she nodded. "I appreciate your apology, Mr. Langston," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Acknowledging your actions is a first step. Change takes more than words, it takes time and consistency." Gregory nodded vigorously, relief flickering across his face. "I understand. And I respect whatever decision you make about anything." He hesitated, then added, "I don't expect a second chance. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." Simone offered a small, gracious smile. "Apology accepted, Mr. Langston. But as for business partnerships..." Her smile sharpened just slightly. "The Sterling Room stands for values that must be lived, not just spoken. I believe you have work to do. And I wish you the best on that journey." Gregory swallowed hard, nodded, and turned to leave. As he disappeared through the door, the weight of finality settled over the room. Maya turned to Simone, her eyes wide with awe. "You're incredible," she whispered. Simone chuckled softly. "No, Maya. I'm just determined." Over the following months, the Sterling Room blossomed into more than just a restaurant. It became a symbol. A testament to the idea that dignity is not negotiable. That standing firm in the face of arrogance is not just possible, it's powerful. Simone's staff thrived under her leadership. Young employees like Maya grew bolder, handling difficult customers with new confidence, knowing they had a leader who would always stand behind them. New training programs emphasized empathy, professionalism, and strength. Clear policies about customer conduct were posted at the entrance. Respect is the cornerstone of the Sterling Room. It is expected from everyone, without exception. Simone often stood by the window overlooking the bustling dining room, watching her dream alive and thriving, a quiet smile curving her lips. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the city, bathing the streets in gold, Maya approached her. "Miss Brooks," she said, her voice steady with newfound self-assurance, "you didn't just build a restaurant. You built a family. And you taught us that dignity isn't something anyone can take away from us." Simone placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, pride swelling in her chest. "And you, Maya, will pass that lesson on to others," she said warmly. That's how real change happens. The Sterling room buzzed with life around them, laughter, clinking glasses, the low hum of jazz filling the air, and at its heart stood Simone Brooks, a woman who had proven that true leadership is measured not by titles, but by the courage to stand tall when it matters most. In reflecting on Simone Brooks' story, there's a powerful lesson we can all take to heart. True dignity is not given by others, it is carried within us. In a world that often measures worth by status, wealth, or appearance, Simone reminded us that real power lies in standing firm for what is right, even in the face of humiliation and injustice. She showed us that leadership is not about titles or authority, it's about protecting those around us, leading with compassion, and never compromising our values, no matter how tempting it might be to lash out or stoop to someone else's level. When Simone chose patience over retaliation, strength over anger, and grace over ego, she didn't just defend herself, she inspired everyone watching. Her actions taught her team that no amount of disrespect from the outside could diminish the pride they carried within. And more importantly, she set a standard for future generations. We are not defined by how others treat us, we are defined by how we choose to respond. This story is a reminder that justice sometimes looks like quiet endurance followed by bold truth. It's not always loud or vengeful, it's often calm, steady, and deeply courageous. When we stand up for our dignity without losing our integrity, we plant seeds of change not just for ourselves but for everyone watching. Respect must be non-negotiable, kindness must be expected, and leadership must be earned through action. To every listener who has experienced moments where they were underestimated, disrespected, or treated unfairly, remember, your worth is not determined by those who fail to see it. Like Simone Brooks, you have the right, and the power, to stand tall, to protect your values, and to build spaces where respect and dignity are the foundation, not the exception. On behalf of U.S. Justice Stories, I want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us today. Your presence, your thoughts, and your belief in fairness mean everything. If Simone's story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of the importance of standing firm in your own life, we invite you to be part of this growing community. Please consider subscribing to us, Justice Stories, for more true-to-life lessons about courage, justice, and resilience. And remember, every small stand for respect today shapes a better, more just world for tomorrow. Thank you for believing in dignity, in justice, and in the unstoppable power of quiet strength. We'll see you in the next story.